Welcome to the Resilience Within, a personal conversation around the journey of healing and self-determination, where we ask each other two things. What are your current questions, and what is your current medicine? And by medicine, we mean the energy that supports our healing and self-determination. Each episode will include a centering exercise and invitations to breathe as a way to practice slowing down into the present moment. The end of each episode will include an art and writing prompt inspired by the conversation. Feel free to share what you create through our Instagram page at the_resilience_within. We might post your work with your permission. My name is Joyous Windrider Jimenez, a somatic trauma coach, teaching artist, and writer. And this is the Resilience Within. So check in. How are you doing? What are you feeling? How's it going? What's going on in this moment?
I'm pretty good. I feel like I'm very sensitive to the full moon, so I can already feel it coming and doing its work and the unraveling process. I always feel like full moons are a big like purging time for me. So I'm already feeling that. And then on top of it, I am leaving for a trip on Wednesday for a while. So I'm feeling a little bit scattered, but today I was just, had to, when I was feeling that way, I told myself, okay, I need to just prioritize feeling good first, and then everything else will fall from that place. So I spent time doing my practice, and I did some breath work and just getting grounded. And so now I feel more prepared for this. So that's good.
That's wonderful. So I'm just curious when you say the full moon, when you're talking about the full moon,
Mhm.
and just the things that are coming up, what does that feel like in your body?
Hmm, that's a good question. I think it depends on the full moon. I think there was one that was 1 or 2 ago that was so intense. So sometimes it really feels like a death process where it feels like my body is kind of being unraveled. It's the only thing I could think of. So sometimes there's a lot of energy that I guess is, you know, kind of intense sensations um, that are moving through and just kind of forcing anything that's on the surface out. And I can't really go business as usual, I think, for me around the full moon time. So yeah.
I think that's really cool that you have that connection and that like charting so you can say, okay, this is what's happening right now, and
Yeah,
go
it's
along
nice.
with that rhythm. Hmm. So it's the end of the school year for me, and for some reason there are just so many things happening. I barely have time to breathe. And so this weekend I found myself just like kind of flat, like didn't want to do anything, didn't want to see anyone, and just today was a lot of, just a lot of chaos in the classroom, getting last final art papers out to the kids, and it's just been like boom, 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 boom. So it feels like lately I really just have to trust as like things are just flying by. And just remind myself that okay, in this moment I'm okay, and this will pass. So
Mhm.
so coming into this, I was kind of like, wow, you haven't had time to really like to calm down or anything. You're just coming into this as you are. But I think that's good because I really want this to be something that is real, and isn't like just over polished, and allows like people who want a little bit of that, to find this here. So
Yeah, and they can go through the journey with us. As you're
yeah.
going to guide us through a somatic exercise.
Yes,
So they'll go through the journey with us.
yes, that's so right. You're so right. Yeah, I feel like everybody's kind of like overwhelmed and just like
Mhm.
in their process. Well, at least just feeling overwhelmed, if they're in their process or they understand what's happening.
Mhm.
It's kind of the state of the nation. So Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Um, well, my name is Arielle Yoon. I think a big part of my identity, and I'm in a process still of defining and being in inquiry and relationship with what my medicine is. And I think part of my medicine feels like it is rooted in that I'm mixed. I'm a quarter Mexican, Hungarian, Jewish, Russian, and Korean. And I feel like that's a big part of my medicine. And so I worked as a lawyer for some time, and the process of becoming a lawyer is a long time too. And interning, I did police accountability work. I worked at the public defender's office. I did immigration stuff, defending people crossing the border out in Lone Star cases. And sometimes I think people think it's a pivot to now I'm doing healing work. But to me, it actually feels like it's part of the same process, because what I did that work for and why I wanted to go into law school is because I wanted, I guess, a world that was different. I wanted the systems to change. I wanted accessibility to the things we all deserve, to be accessed for everyone and not be restricted to people by race or class or those things. And so I wanted to be a civil rights lawyer when I went into law school. And then when I went to law school, I went to a good law school. So that really also informed my perspective a lot of kind of who is leading this nation. And I saw a lot of stuff, and people who go on to clerk for Supreme Court justices, people who could potentially become Supreme Court justices, are working for the ACLU, all these things. And then also in being in court myself, I really just felt like the way to make the difference is through healing. Like when I was working in rural Texas courts, I just felt like fighting over each other when I know that just arguing about something and trying to be right actually just never actually convinces the person. So then how do we come to, like, what is actually coming to a new reality look like? And if it's just this push and pull between two sides, I've never seen that work. I went through a process of trying to do that a lot, and I never saw it work. And so I started to believe, okay, what works is us talking about, um, where is the perspective coming from, and having the person be heard and all of this stuff. So anyways, this all to say that, and then on top of it, most of us, I know there's a statistic I didn't write it down specifically, so I don't know exactly what it is, but like 90% of the country, or 75% of the country, lives in dysregulation like 90% of the time. So also a big part of changing, perspectives and stuff is people having the nervous systems to actually deal with it, and nervous systems actually change. And when we're in trauma and when society is putting us in fight or flight all the time, none of that's going to happen. And so I really felt at some point that my best, and I think everyone's journey is unique, but my best way of making the difference was through healing. And so right now I'm doing one-on-one healing, and I've been really loving it, and it's very rooted. I'm very rooted right now in traditional, like, folk healing. I'm very interested in kind of bringing back the wisdom from our ancestors, from land-based practices, from connecting with ancestors, like I said. And I've been on my own healing journey for about 10 years. So I've pretty much done everything. I've done breath work. I've done, every technique that people have tried. I feel like I've tried at some point or other. So that definitely informs my work. So it's very bringing in different things from different or different wisdoms, I should say, from different modalities of like, what was the truth I got to from studying that.
Yeah, and so that question of how do I make the biggest impact, I feel is one that I constantly return to again and again and again in some
Mhm.
shape or form or another. Now I feel like the words are there all the time. How do I make the biggest impact? What does that look like? Where is the root? And so I love that you've decided for you, helping people through dysregulation in the community is really important before we even get into discussions um, that have to do with policy and law and justice. Um,
Yeah. And just last thing is just to me too, trauma is cyclical. So it's helping people get to just regulation, but it's also that treating the trauma that's making it so people can't see a different perspective. Like I feel like that's what's happening in, Israel and Palestine, where, I'm part Jewish and I can see that a lot of Jewish people who are pro what's happening right now, pro Israel, the way that it's being, are people who've suffered trauma themselves. And so until we heal that, we really can't see like more perspectives. It's just going to kind of always inform the way we see things. And so we're going to keep perpetuating the things we've gone through. And so, yeah, on so many different levels, I feel like it's related.
I invited Arielle to take us through a grounding exercise, so I invite you to settle in and breathe with us.
Okay. What I love the idea of is that even through media, that we can still feel connected and grounded and still feel like we're bringing in elements of ceremony. So first, just paying attention to our breath and just notice how deep your breath goes and see if you can relax so that your breath can go a little bit deeper into your body, maybe being able to reach all the way down to your stomach as you can feel your belly expand, maybe all the way down to your womb or your sit bone. Just continue to breathe and let the current air and energy cycle out from the out breath as you release things from your day. And feeling the prana or life force coming in to support you. Now, try to imagine that you have roots that are coming down from your roots or your sit bone into the earth like a big wide tree. So you may want to imagine them going deep into the earth and very wide as you feel the support of the earth that we have, and you feel the grounding that the earth provides. And let yourself just take a moment to, again, let anything else fall away that's on your mind, any worries, any concerns. And let yourself just feel and receive the support that our Mother Earth provides us and is providing us in this moment. Now, I like to use this time to create some sacred space. So just tuning in to the safety that there is here. And you can imagine that we're all together around in a circle, sitting together. And you come with an intention. You may think to yourself, an intention you have here. And one of my intentions is that we are able to come with our full selves here. There's no right way of being, no right way of showing up. But in these moments or in this hour or time, we are exactly in the right place and doing exactly the right thing. You may imagine that around us, around the circle, is support for us. You can imagine ancestors or any other spiritual support. It could be other elements of the earth. Could be flower, flowers that are very supportive or herbs that are supportive. Or animals. And they're all surrounding us here as we get to take a reprieve from everyday life to just exhale and feel the safety of the protection that we have here and on our journeys. As we keep taking a couple more breaths to cycle through the air. Let them be really big if you want to. You may want to count to 5 on the inhale and 5 on the exhale. As we really expand our ability to take in relaxation here. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and arrive to this space.
Okay, very nice. I love how you bring in flowers and plants for support in your work. When I had that session with you, that was something very striking to me. Can you tell us more about why you do this and how it works?
Yeah, I would say so for me, in the because I do think, I think there's the way that modern day healing is, and there's also a movement of us that feel really called to the ways that our ancestors lived more. And we see the disconnect of life now of just like, we're all kind of trying to survive alone. We don't really have any support. You know, we're feeling on this hustle, even just being an adult for ourselves just feels like too much. And so there's this element of remembering that's really important to me. And part of my being mixed is I feel also like there's a lot of people who are trying to figure out what it looks like to live with the land and live in these ways that our ancestors lived, but don't really know how, because, you know, I've heard people who are Mexican who feel like, well, I don't know specifically what my lineage is. I don't know how indigenous I am. And then I hear people who are, you know, of other nationalities and races who feel very disconnected from the land. And so I'm really interested in how we, without like taking specific practices from specific lineages, how do we get to the wisdom, like the piece of wisdom that we can use now here? And so a lot of the times we can feel like it's really attractive that there's this herb that's really popular somewhere far away, or this practice, you know, I have to go to do ayahuasca in this place, or all of this stuff that's kind of far from us. But how do we, with the wisdom of those practices, the wisdom is like connecting with the plants. The wisdom is connecting with the elements, with the water, with the herbs that are native around us, and really developing relationships so that we can really truly take in the support. And so in that way, you know, we don't need a lot of money to buy these expensive things or go out to these expensive things. We could be really connecting with, you know, the chamomile tea we buy at HEB, you know? And so in that way, it's just like really orienting and teaching ourselves that it's actually the most support comes from like the simplicity and the intention, you know, of really trusting ourselves to connect again with the earth, that connection is already there. And just leaning into it and seeing, okay, what are the things that I'm attracted to? And I know for me, growing up, I joke that like I was raised by the mountains. Like I definitely feel very connected to nature, and that it's always been something that's been really special for me, and provided me just support that in our society where a lot of us are still healing in progress, it's, the flowers, nature can always be there for us, and that's rare. That's like a rare compared to humans. Humans usually can't always authentically be there for us. And so I think just really really reorienting ourselves and really taking in the support of what is here for us can really help us in our journey and also help our nervous systems and really understand that we're not alone in the journey.
I love that. I love the idea of the support being around us through plants and through nature. Um, especially because currently I'm at a place where, the way that I'm engaging with my community and friends is changing.
Mhm.
And part of it is moving from isolation into a place of solitude that is
Mhm.
not about hiding, but is also about being with myself, right? So not hiding from myself and not
Mhm.
running after someone to talk to just because I'm feeling. There's nothing wrong with connecting with people, but also making sure that I'm spending that time with myself so that I can hear those like the subtle messages that are coming up. So I love the idea of connecting to nature and plants. So, okay, so one question just for like if someone didn't grow up in the mountains or where it wasn't taken outside or maybe, is just at the beginning stages, what would be some easy things that you think that they could do that would be accessible and wouldn't be too complicated?
Yeah, and that's something I think is an important question because I would say I feel like people like one of the things is just building the trust within ourselves.
Mm.
And so, and I feel that way even just like with nature rituals. Like I'll tell my clients sometimes, go to the river, cleanse in the river, and it can feel scary because we weren't raised with these rituals. So I think that's where sometimes we can cling, and sometimes that's why people are like, let me go get white sage, which, a lot of indigenous people are telling people they don't want people to use it, non-indigenous people to use it. And so, because we're kind of clinging to these specific things. And so, but just building trust within ourselves. So honestly, you could just start really simple, like learning more about one herb that you know and maybe are curious about and trying to make it into a little bit more of a ceremony when you make the tea for yourself. Let's say jamaica or hibiscus herb, like when you make it, you really like think about it and be like, oh, what is this herb providing me, and what how can I put some intention, like both in the way I said it, but then also like what is my intention? Oh, I really want to give myself nourishment because I've been working, so much, and I deserve this time to really fill myself up with something that also feels like it reminds me of my abuela and all of those things. And so sometimes it could just be simple, or like, the tree outside of you or on your neighborhood street, and starting to say hello to it, and just, or maybe even just notice if that feels like too far off, maybe just noticing it a little bit more, like, oh, this is really interesting. I never sat here and just looked at, the life that this tree provides for, like how many animals are living up there. When I really look, I notice how many, birds there are, and wow, this tree is really sturdy. And when I think about it, look, wow, the tree is really old and it must be wise, and so just like really kind of just, it could be very simple, but just but then again, how it ties into somatics, right? Of just like it allows us also to come more into our body and into the present moment, and so just when taking those little cue moments in our days, or you could take it like one time a week and go to the park or something, and just becoming a little bit more present with the things around you and a little bit more curious. And then, it is a long journey. Like I think I studied herbalism, and I studied it a couple of years ago, and I know probably a lot more than the average person, but I know that I don't know anything near as much as I would know if I was, brought up with this knowledge of, the plants. And so just also really giving yourself a lot of grace, that it's going to be a process, and just also allowing yourself to trust yourself in the ways that you can weave it into your life, whether it's like also, in Texas, there's a lot of rivers, like going to the river and being like, let me just cleanse myself from this heavy energy that I'm going through. And then now let me ask for some intentions. And now let me do another soak under the water with the intentions that I have that I want to call in with the water. And so, yeah, a lot of it can be very intuitive, because like rivers are flowing. And so we want to do one more like we're going through change. And so, yeah, it's very expansive, but it's also really, it's really amazing. And so I recommend for everyone.
I love that. I love that prescription. Go cleanse in the
Yeah.
river. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Seems so simple and accessible. I think my flower is the dandelion. Dandelion's my thing.
I have dandelion tea. Maybe
Oh,
you attracted, like, I just intuitively.
yeah. I like its wildness. I like its rebellion. I like the wishing part of it. It's very poetic.
Yes,
And I know it's medicinal as well.
very medicinal. It's like super medicinal. Which also I think is so beautiful. Like I love the like city flowers that somehow survive in these environments that are really not very hospitable to them. But then they have all this medicine, and it's just really beautiful. I really like my city flower. I really like is the prickly poppy.
Okay.
Dude, it's like the one that is it has, maybe now that I say you'll notice it. It's kind of, it's not everywhere, but it basically has a very like prickly stems, like very, very prickly. Like you wouldn't want to touch it the whole time. And then the top of it is like this very white poppy looking flower that's like very soft and white.
Okay.
It's really pretty. And I think the first time I really looked at it was in Del Rio. I was there for work, and it was in the middle of the city,
Huh.
and so now that I say it, you might see it around.
I've never thought of city flowers. That's an amazing phrase.
Yeah.
That's mine. I love that. I'm taking that phrase with me. I'm going to play with that. That is so beautiful.
Yeah, I actually have a tattoo that's like, that's kind of the meaning of it. It's
There's
like the city flowers grow, in environments that are really difficult, and they still find ways to thrive and like create beauty when everything is going on in the world.
Yes, I love that. And speaking of everything's going on in the world, you were talking about change. And so I'm curious, like in your or whatever you'd like to share with us, like where are you sensing change and how is that alive for you right now?
Hmm. So in the world, where am I?
In your life, in relation to the world, just I feel like there's change everywhere. So like I don't know if there's anyone who is not sensing change, but what does that mean for you currently? I know that you
Hmm.
said you're about to embark on a trip to Hungary and you know you're doing some things to really support yourself and heal. Uh,
Mhm.
so when I say the word change, how does that how does that feel in your body as far as where life is around this idea of change that you're willing to share and that feels comfortable?
That's a good, this is kind of funny because this is something I'm like currently working on. But what I would say to me is, um, it's interesting because I feel like the more that you open your awareness, the more that you really notice how you're feeling about things. Like there could be stuff that, oh yeah, that happened to me a lot of times, like, 8 years ago, but I wasn't as aware as I am now. And so I didn't really feel as much of the impact that was going on internally. Maybe I felt more numbness. And so I didn't have as much awareness. And so now, as I live my life more intuitively and feeling like I pray for answers, and then I get guidance that says to do different things and change. I left my lawyer job, all this stuff, that can feel scary and kind of like, what's her name? Estes, I might be saying her name wrong. The woman who wrote Women Who Run with Wolves. You know, she talks about just the life death cycle and rebirth, you know, death and rebirth, and how we're like constantly like you know, the idea that the one thing that's constant about life is that everything is always changing. And sometimes I think when we don't have a lot of awareness, we don't realize how much grief there is with that, and how much, you know, younger versions of ourselves are like, no, I don't want this. I want to stay right here. I know what this is like, you know? And so I feel like I'm in kind of always a continuous process of really embracing change, you know, like a lot of the times unhealed parts of us can be staying stagnant in relationships that aren't really aligned for our souls in the long term, our jobs and all of that. But to leave those things and to really like align to our path, you know, and I feel like we talk about this a lot of like, what does aligning to our path for the best of the world look like? You know, and when we're really aligning to that and trying to really focus on that and be devoted to it, a lot of the times we're going to have to be you know, I kind of come like, to me sometimes it feels like I'm being brought to my knees, where I'm just like, okay, I surrender. I don't know what I know. I'm being told to do this. This is very hard, you know, but I'll keep going anyways, and I'll move through the processes so that I don't get stuck and I don't just stay there, but then also feeling all the feelings that are coming up, which is, you know, the feelings that people who are stuck there don't want to feel, which is why they're there. You know, it's not easy. And so, and it always keeps me humble, because I'm like, oh, you know, I can't compare my journey to anyone else's, because it's not easy. And so I feel like I'm in that process now again. And I went through a huge upheaval last year. So I was funny because I just started getting into astrology, and my birth chart kept saying like, get ready for change, like everything might fall apart around you. And I was like, what could even fall apart now? And then of course now there's just big change, and I'm having to really just create my internal grounding. And yeah, it's a lot. And then that's also, there's stuff going on in the world, so a lot of needing internal grounding.
Yeah. I'm glad that this came up, or I'm glad that we're talking about this, because as we're talking, I'm realizing I'm going through the same thing. I'm losing my sense of context, and this has happened so many times. But I can see that there's a judgment that I've had on myself, almost as if I blame myself that there's been so much change. And if I had been a different type of person, or someone who was able to hold themselves together, maybe there wouldn't be so much of this, you know, life death cycle. Maybe I could have stayed in a more you know, a continuum, right? Some kind of continuity, I guess. And at this point, I feel the change happening. It's happening around me, it's happening in me. You know, and I still feel a part, even though I know that it's important. There is a judgment, because it's like, how many times is this going to happen? Like, how many times are you going to be, you know, reborn again, and, you know, start over? But, you know, maybe, I don't know if that's for everyone, but I know that, you know, for me and for people I know, you know, it happens a lot.
Yes, I really have, I feel like I totally understand that. And I think it's something that sometimes, I mean, there's obviously could be, because I relate to that a lot, of like comparing my journey to other people's journeys, and just being like, why does my journey, like just sitting there, you know, being like very pensive, like, why does my journey always look so different than everyone else's? Like, I just want like that ordinary, just, you know, like just simple stuff. And I feel like that's never been my life. And I think I'm just getting to the point where I'm like, oh, it's just because like my path is just totally different, you know? And I really didn't come here. Like I feel like I'm having to own this within myself, of just like, I didn't really come here to fit in. I didn't really come here to like fit into the molds of what things are supposed to be done. Like that's just not my life path. And it's not to say like, because my ex-boyfriend and I are still really good friends, and we're talking about like our medicine, you know, and like my medicine feels it's very activating, you know, it's really like I also I feel like I have that kind of like sage archetype where I'm kind of like on my own and then like come out and say some stuff and then I go on my own again. Like I need a lot of time alone, like meditating, doing my practices. But he is very much like just the person, like everyone loves him. But I think there's a lot of medicine he has in that, you know, like he can go within the crowd, like the crowd, and do a lot of work within that of making change. And that's part of his process, you know? So this is all to say, like, there's not necessarily like a, you know, a right or wrong answer because we all have our different paths. But then within us, like maybe with me and you, like just owning what our path, like, oh, this is just what my path looks like. And just bringing a lot of like acceptance. And I feel like I'm starting to finally just let go of like, okay, it's not supposed to look like these other people's paths. That's really not my medicine. It's really not my journey. And so I feel like I'm finally coming to an acceptance with that.
Yeah, yeah. And I think part of that acceptance or part of that like processing for me, um, first of all is just what you said about it's just like, oh, okay, fine, fine. I don't know. I'm just gonna let this happen because it's happening. But I think that the other thing is there is a grief in there. That is a part of it that I'm still learning um how to do in a way that is healthy and is cyclical and is like empowering, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And human, I think human. And so it makes me wonder, where is the grief for you? Again, whatever you feel comfortable sharing. How is grief a part of this for you? And, how is that showing up? Like, how does that look?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so, I'm like, it's so cute, but it's cute because I've had some sessions with some women who are like new mothers or like clients and part of the thing that they didn't realize they had a process is grief, you know, like grief of, oh, now my life's gonna be completely different. And you know, I thought that I was gonna like I thought I was gonna be able to do all this stuff before I had a child, and I didn't get that done. And you know, I thought my life would look more this way. That I'm not giving any specific examples, but just things that people go through. And um, I feel like that's part of it too. So for me, I'm like, I don't feel ready to share exactly what it is, but I can, or what the change is, but I feel ready to share like the process. So for me, a lot of it feels like, again, it's like younger versions of myself that thought my life was going to look a certain way. Kind of like what we're saying, you know, like I thought, like my friend groups would look a certain way. I thought that this would look a certain way. I thought, and a lot of it did come from like unhealed versions of myself. And it's interesting because it's always kind of paradoxical. Like the more we let go of like the way that things like being attached to something looking a certain way, the more freedom we have for it to like look, it might not even look opposite. Like it might look kind of similar, but like just different, you know, because if kind of like what you brought up of like being stable and just, and this I'm saying for myself, like being stable within myself and not just surrounding myself with people to surround myself with people. Um, I really had to go through that. And because the younger version of myself always was trying to fill this void with people. I didn't see it for so long, but like, you know, I had this void from, you know, childhood. And then I was like, oh, maybe I'll do every single thing to like mold myself into everything that people want me to be so that I'll finally feel like the love that I wanted, you know, and like fit in. I'll be that girl that everyone loves, you know, and like just trying to fill that hole with it, or you know, that wound within myself with everything, but like those things were never gonna fill it. And like because I was trying to fill this hole, I was staying in friendships that like aren't aligned anymore, you know, friendships that really just don't like they weren't ever aligned, like we didn't really have that much in common. But like, you know, I was just clinging, like someone needs to, like it's like this and that, like everyone around me, like just someone has to cover this because I don't want to feel this. you
Mhm.
know, and anytime I did feel it, I would just disassociate. Like I was like, I cannot feel this. And so, but when I finally have gone through the process of healing that within myself, I feel like I can now, you know, choose who I want to spend time with. I'm like, oh, I wasn't really choosing. Like I was just kind of like going with the flow. And I do think a lot of people do that too.
Yes.
And because it was like we all want to feel accepted, you know, and we know those friend groups that I'm kind of like, do you guys like each other? Because everyone's talking about each other and you know, no one's having direct conversations and all this stuff. And so but we just feel this obligation or like we just feel like, oh, this is how things are, you know.
Yeah.
And so for me to be like able to select differently, I had to feel that within myself. And so this is all to say, I guess with the change, I had to really just like all these kind of visions that came from that place of my life of just like what I thought I wanted my life to look like, you know, from when I was younger, like for so many years, you know, what my parents thought I should look like. So then I thought my life should look like that. It feels like, you know, every step from last year to this year to now probably next year, it's just like I'm moving further and further away from that, you know,
Yeah.
and further away from like, oh, that friend group that I always wanted that never really felt right and all this stuff. And so I like as that's happening, you know, it's like you're looking back and you're like, wait, now it's gonna be too far. I'm not gonna even be able to go back if I wanted to, you know. And so there's can be just a lot of grieving, I think, in that process. And then also grieving of just like you know, when we're changing, there's also parts of us that have to like purge so that we're ready for that, right? So it's like if I want a different romantic relationship, I have to purge the stuff that was keeping me last one. It can't be, it's like something Cindy Dale, who's like an energy worker, says it's like paper doll syndrome, which basically just means like you could have, if you have this like energetic blueprint in you or like this unhealed thing that's attracting something, like you can replace the person, but it's going to be the same thing. You know what I mean?
I
And
love
so
it.
yeah, so it's like if I want a different relationship, like I know from my past relationship to now, I'm like, okay, there's now I see these other things I want. But then also like I know I'm having to heal all the stuff that isn't aligned to that version of me yet, you
Yes.
know, because it's like,
Yeah.
of course, I'm not gonna be able to have like the most healthy, beautiful relationship if I haven't healed all my codependency stuff, you know, and there's a lot of layers to that, especially when we you know, most of us are raised in families who haven't had the chance that they were in survival for generations, so they haven't had a chance to do the healing themselves. So we don't have a lot of like role models and stuff. So there's a lot of just like, okay, more and more and more. So yeah.
Yes, I love that. It's I love this idea of a paper doll of well, modeling, right? This is the modeling that we had. The shape that's within us is attracting, the
Mm-hmm.
shape without. And I know for me, like just right, during this time it's been a lot of, well, I just can't, like I can't fit in. I can't be what's expected, either, implied or, I've decided or, it was told. And that is like really, it really is a grieving.
Mm-hmm.
It really is like a whole letting go. And I have the age thing. I mean, I'm about to turn 50, and so there's a whole bunch of stuff happening there as well.
So you have a very young spirit.
Thank you. I'm trying to grow up, and people are like, well, maybe you don't need to. But I'm trying to grow up and, just accept who I am versus who I was trying to be. And there is a sadness, there is a grief there that is huge.
Mhm.
And there is a comfort I realize that cannot come from anyone else. Like it really has to come from within my higher self, from something other than another person. And almost, lately I think about this. I'm in this strange place of like having a desire for connection, but also being unwilling to have any connection that doesn't align with what I
That's what I
need.
love.
I feel like my needs are so exquisitely nuanced that like nobody can at this moment can help me or fulfill it because I'm still working it out within myself. Like
Mhm,
I'm still understanding what my needs are. And
mhm,
it's funny because I'm thinking about what you said about the tree outside. There's a tree outside my window who's always with me. And maybe, there's something in that for me, for this part of me that really needs a certain type of company that I can't necessarily um, articulate yet, that I might find in the trees. But there is definitely a grief there, and it's just like I have to just decide to do it because I can't pretend anymore. Um,
yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah, it
so
sounds like you're really like going into kind of the root. Because I always like, I think healing, it's like this iceberg, and there can be this like annoying habit on the top, and we're like, oh, why can't I ever say no to my friends? Like this cute healing thing. But then what it actually is this like deep thing at the bottom of it that's like this pain that's like our deepest pain that we like it's just accumulated our whole life, and we do not want to feel, and also it's probably our parents' lives and their parents and you know what I mean.
yeah.
And so that feeling can be really hard, and yeah, I think really tuning into the resources, that's really when I was going through my dark night of soul and I was feeling those feelings. That was really when my relationship with my ancestors had to get really strong, because I was like, I can't do this. I can't feel this alone. So I was like, please help me. And yeah, connecting with the trees, I would like spend a lot of time outside, and then it would just help me feel more grounded in it.
Well, and that's really interesting because you and I did one session together.
Mhm,
And I really enjoyed how gentle you were about it and how you made sure that I was supported in it. And one of the parts was calling the ancestors. And
mhm,
I struggled with that. And you helped me to set up a space where actually there was a tree behind my back, and then there was plants around me. There was dandelion. Um,
mhm,
and I took that with me and have referred to it. And one of the things I realized later on is one of the reasons that I was struggling is because of the grief attached to, and see, I can feel that so deep, uh,
mhm,
to those who have passed.
mhm.
And just a absolute, terrifying, like a fear around the grief involved with those who have
Mhm.
passed. And so
And
that's
these
why
are people you knew, right?
people I knew, yeah, like the
Yeah. So I
closest
would say
ones. Yeah.
it's funny, like now that I'm a healer, I feel like I'm constantly both within myself, and because I do feel like the quality of, like, I think we've talked about this too. I feel like a lot of us healers, we still don't have as much support as we need. I don't feel like there's enough like elders out there. And so there is still kind of like, okay, trying to deepen, because I feel like the quality of healing out there is not it's kind of surface level. And so like trying to keep deepening it, like as a society, it's like kind of trying to figure it out. And so anyways, I had a session, and she was like, and we are going into really deep trauma. And anyways, I guess this is all to say, like, some people, I think when they bring up stuff, they'll be like, oh, just was your grandma like safe? Okay, have them go there. But I think it's like, I really feel like we shouldn't do things that way. So basically, this is all to say that I think, like, if in our culture, I feel like we talked about this a lot, there's like, I feel like trauma is pretty across the board. Like almost everyone I feel like has attachment trauma, has developmental trauma, all of that stuff. So that what that means is like the generations of before us didn't have the resources, like emotionally, physically, all of them, to actually be able to cope with what they were dealing with, for multiple generations. And so we're here just kind of like, okay, now let me figure out how to do all this. And so I think for ancestor work, I feel like it's really important to like note, and even if like for the person listening, the person's like, oh yeah, I think my grandma's okay. I feel like even if you think that, like, be even more cautious and try to go back further, like not to the recent people, and like pray on like, can I connect with someone I know is safe, and well, and like, keep boundaries, but also like, and it be, like multiple generations ago. So it's not like you're trying to figure out if your grandmother was like resourced enough to hold you at this point, because at also like, kind of like what we're doing in our session, like when we're opening up trauma and we're having someone hold us there, we want to really make sure they're safe. And I've been noticing that within myself, that it's like, oh, if I have trauma around opening up and it being not safe people to do that, then like being in a healing session where the person can't do it, and that includes connecting with my ancestors, and the person can't hold me, that's also going to cause some trauma. It's going to just keep reinforcing the same thing of like, I can't be held, I'm alone, I'm all on this alone, all of that stuff. So again, like even with connecting with ancestors, I recommend people start further back. Like you could even think like, okay, it could be somewhere 1,000 years old, when the people were living with the land. If you're Mexican and indigenous, that's more likely than if you're European. But those ancestors, and connect with them first before trying to figure out if your recent grandparents maybe were healed. Because also, if depending where we are in our healing journey, we might not even be able to see our family members clearly, and realize like maybe they actually didn't have the space to hold us as much as we thought that they could. And so just like that's why I feel like it makes sense to start way back and then kind of move your way up when you have more resources and you already have some of the support.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love thinking about ancestors that were in the rhythms of nature. And what I've learned about like just even this area and the nomadic people who lived here, and just how they were able to follow the rhythms of the stars and seasons and water.
Mhm.
And just thinking about that, like that is a place that is definitely inspiring, and I can find strength in. So I
Mhm.
love that. I love that. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. And you can even just, be like I'm going to have boundaries again for my recent ones. Like we can come back to this, but I need to take care of myself right now. Because also it really is like, I feel like with healing, it really is like the oxygen mask on first kind of thing, where it's like you really have to make sure you're resourced enough to get through it before you can help people who also aren't resourced. So
Yes, for healing that lineage, right?
yeah.
That's gorgeous. That's beautiful. We've actually come to our hour.
Yeah. Do you want to do like a one last question, or you can choose?
Yeah, well, I would love to do one last question, and then I'd love to do like a little checkout, and just get, if I guess if you want to say anything about how people could contact you, or if you want
Mhm.
to share anything like that. So what what brings you joy? What sparks the joy right now?
That's also been we've hit all these topics I've been working on this past year, but this has also been a good topic I've been really working on this year. And I would say like to me, it really is the simple things a lot. And I also feel like I'm paying attention more to just the things that are just simple, or I guess even just like the types of art I like. So for example, I really have been noticing, I'm like, oh yeah, I love plays and I love Broadway. And that's there's something about the music and the just how creative they are. And a lot of the times they're trying to give, a lot of them will have, societal lessons and depth and all these layers that I just feel like is so brilliant. And so I took myself out to go see Hairspray in San Antonio. Yeah,
Nice.
and I was like, I'm gonna go see it. I haven't gone to a Broadway in a long time. So I went to see that. And then there's also the simple everyday things, like I've been gardening, I've been starting an herb garden. And so
Nice.
I've been loving spending time with my plants, and just like every time they're growing, I'm like, oh my God, it's so funny because my cat is obsessed with it. I have a catnip plant, and he like broke into one of my bags and ate it all at the nighttime. And I also love music. So I've been more conscious of just spending a little bit more time throughout my day of just being kind of intentionally I guess for pleasure of just like, okay, I'm just gonna play some music I really like as I sit down and eat dinner. And yeah, so just it's a lot of the times it's just the simple things, but those things are what bring me joy.
Very nice. Thank you. And then just out of curiosity, what does joy feel like in your body?
Hmm, that's a good question. I feel like it feels like relaxation and then also this feeling of feeling full.
Mm.
Like you don't feel like there's something that you are searching for. It's just like in this moment, it feels very present. And I guess very present in your senses as well.
Do you think of it as nourishing?
Yes.
Because I kind of think of it as food.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just kind of,
We
yeah.
need all the rewiring for that. But yeah, we need it.
Yes, yes, yes. Even just hearing you talk about it, it feels nourishing to me to hear. I can like feel the vibration of nourishment. Okay, well, let's check out. How are you feeling in this moment?
I'm feeling really good. This was such a fun conversation. I love every time we talk, I always feel super just like alive. You know, they say like you should do more of the things that feel like they give you energy. I feel that way every time we talk. And so it was fun to do this and be able to potentially share with other people the types of conversations we're always having. And so it's really fun. So yeah, I feel good.
Yay. Thank you. I feel really nourished. I can feel that coming into my body. And like I started out with just like, oh wow, like let me catch my breath. And now just feeling like I got some real rest, some real energy from this. And I wanted to tell you something that came up. So I mentioned this weekend the podcast to Empower House Radio. And
Mm.
like they're like, I was like, what if I have content? Would you like to put it on your station? And I told them about it, and they're like, yes, come to the studio. And I was like, well, I was gonna do it on Zoom, and what if the people are out of, and they're like, we can even hook up Zoom through the thing. So it seems like there's space for it on the radio,
Oh, cool.
possibly. So we'll see how that goes. But that's an
Okay.
exciting and also like a scary um
I love it. You're getting all the visibility.
yeah, I just like I really want to be myself, and then I'm like, well, what if being yourself is not appropriate in some situations? But that feel like this is a big part of that is I just want that space where we're just being human, and I want to be brave about it. So yeah.
Yes, I love that.
So Ariel, tell us anything you want to tell us about like how to reach you, how to stay connected to you in whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, so I feel like this summer I'm always going again with the life death cycle thing. I feel like I'm always going through recalibrations. So I could imagine by the time people listen to this, I'll be in the process of things changing. But right now, so my website is arielsheart.com. My Instagram's also arielsheart. And I do one-on-one sessions. I do them virtually and in person in San Antonio at this time. And I also, if you subscribe to my newsletter, I do like, I've been working on just doing content other ways like emails, videos, stuff like that. But it's all kind of being recalibrated in the summer. So to stay tuned.
Well, thank you so much for being the first. You are so brave. You are so wise, and I really
I'm glad we did this.
Today's art and writing prompt is around the medicine of local plants. What plants share space with you daily? What plants might you be overlooking or are interested in getting to know more? You could sketch the plant, write a poem, take a photo, make a video, write a song. Feel free to share what you create with us through the Resilience Within's Instagram page at _resilience_within.